Welcome to the Zera Shimshon in English podcast, in which we learn and explain in a clear and uncomplicated manner an excerpt from the Sefer Zera Shimshon on the Parsha. Parshas Devarim. Can you imagine a situation where your child or student needs to be reprimanded, but you are afraid you will come across too strong? He will be terribly offended, and you'll lose him at least for a few days. On the other hand, you can't let it go. Something has to be done. What should you do? I once heard from Rabbi Chaim, the Rav of Seminary Mechevet, about how Rabbi Zalman Meltzer used his tremendous brilliance to deal with such a situation. A Talmud of Rabbi Zalman said over a Devar Torah that Rabbi Zalman felt was very, very far from the truth. It would have been irresponsible not to correct him, but Rabbi Zalman was afraid the Talmud would be insulted. Rabbi Zalman therefore answered that he could also have thought to say such a Devar Torah. However, he would have said it only because he's a Rosh Yeshiva and he has to say a shir. You, however, are not hired, so it's better to refine it. Rabbi Zalman not only was a genius when he learned Torah, but he also used it when he dealt with people. Let's see how Moshe Rabbeinu dealt with such a situation in this week's Parsha. It is written in this week's Parsha, Eila hadvarim, and these are the words, Asher di b'Moshe el kol Yisrael, that Moshe spoke to all of Yisrael. Be'eva Yarden, on the other side of the Yarden, Bamidbar, in the desert, Ba'avos Moav, on the plain facing Yamsuf, Bein Paran, between Paran, Ubein Teufel, between a Tofel, V'Lovon, and Lovon, V'Chatzeiros, and a place called Chatzeiros, V'Dizahov. On the surface, it seems, this pasuk comes to relate the exact place Moshe spoke to Bnei Yisrael, on a plain, opposite Yamsuf, surrounded by Paran, Lovon, Teufel, Lovon, Chatzeiros, and Dizahov. The Mefarshim ever give a few reasons why this cannot be true. The Ramban writes that if it would be like this, then the Torah is giving more signs and boundaries than one who sells a field. From Rashi, we can learn there are two other reasons. Firstly, it is not possible that they were on the other side of the Yarden and also in the desert, since there is no desert on the other side of the Yarden. Secondly, in all of Tanakh, we don't find places called Teufel and Lovon, so we can assume that such places don't even exist. Rashi therefore explains that the place Moshe rebuked Bnei Yisrael was on the other side of the Yarden. However, the other words mentioned in the pasuk are referring to different misdeeds Bnei Yisrael committed. For instance, in the desert refers to the time shortly after Bnei Yisrael left Mitzrayim, when the people complained that they had been led into the desert to starve. Paran, which is a place from where they sent the Meraglim, the spies, is referring to that incident. B'Chatzeiros is referring to Korach's uprising, since it happened there. Dizahov is referring to the incident of the golden calf, which was caused by having more than enough gold. Dizahav means enough gold. Rashi explains the reason that Moshe concealed and cloaked these sins in names of the different places was that Moshe did not want to embarrass them. Zera Shimshon asks, in the later Parshiyos, the Torah does mention and elaborate on the sin of Korach, the sin of the Meraglim, and the sin of the golden calf, which are the very sins that Moshe concealed here. What then did the Torah gain by initially concealing them? Zera Shimshon gives two answers to this question. The first one is based on the Medrash that makes an interesting observation. Bilam, a wicked person who hated Bnei Israel, blessed Bnei Israel, while Moshe, who loves Bnei Israel, rebuked and gave a curse to Bnei Israel if they do not keep the Torah. The Medrash asks, it would be more appropriate for Moshe to bless us and for Bilam to curse us. The Medrash answers that Hashem chose to be like this in order that there will be no objection to the brachas and the curses. Meaning, if Moshe would have blessed Bnei Israel, the nations who dislike Bnei Israel will object to the brachas and say that they really don't deserve the brachas and receive them only because Moshe loves them so much. And it's the same the other way around also. If Bilam would have cursed us, then Bnei Israel would argue that they really don't deserve to be cursed, and it is only because Bilam hates us did he give his curse. According to this, the reason Moshe initially only alluded to the sins of Bnei Israel, even though later on Moshe specified them, was that Moshe wanted Bnei Israel to realize that he is the one rebuking them and not Bilam. And he's doing it in the most compassionate way he can. And he's doing this out of love for them. After Bnei Israel understand this, later on, when he will specify their sins, they will not feel ashamed, embarrassed, but they will look at it as simply a sympathetic allusion to their sins. Zera Shimshon gives a second explanation in light of what is written in Masechta Sanhedrin. The responsibility the Jewish people have for each other's actions only started after Bnei Israel entered Israel. Before that, a person was only responsible for his own thoughts. Rabbi Nehemiah goes one step farther and is of the opinion that before Bnei Israel entered Israel, a person was not responsible even for the visible actions of others. Although Bnei Israel sinned in the desert, not everyone sinned to the same degree. For instance, Chazal teach us that some people actually worshipped the golden calf, some people hugged and only kissed it, and some people were only happy with it, but didn't do anything physically. Since they were not responsible one for the other, the harshness of their sin was not the same, their punishment was not the same, and it follows that the degree of the rebuke they deserved was also different. The rebuke in the beginning of the Sefer Devarim was concealed and cloaked because Moshe Rabbeinu was directing it toward the people whose sins were done in a concealed and cloaked way, while the open and direct rebuke that Moshe gave later on was directed to the people who sinned openly. There are a few important and practical pieces of advice we should learn from Zera Shimshon and implement them into our own lives. Firstly, before we reprimand our children or students, we should make sure to feel that we love him and make sure that he also feels this love. They should be aware that you're only doing what you're doing because you love them. Secondly, like Moshe Rabbeinu, be careful not to embarrass him when you give him the mussar he deserves. Make sure no one is around so he won't be embarrassed. Thirdly, if a whole group acted improperly, try not to give one punishment for everyone, since they are not all equally guilty. Thank you for listening, and the merit of your learning the Divrei Torah of Zera Shimshon, Hashem should honor the promise that Zera Shimshon made for people to learn his Torah. And your eyes will see children and grandchildren like the offshoots of an olive tree around your tables, wise and understanding, with houses filled with all manner of good things and wealth and honor.